All right, so today we're going to dive into something
Okay.
kind of darkly fascinating.
Sounds good.
We're going to explore Schadenfreude, that feeling of enjoyment. Let's
Yeah.
be honest.
Yeah.
We sometimes get from someone else's misfortune.
Right.
I know
Yeah.
I know it sounds a bit mean when you put it like that.
Yeah, it does.
But trust me, it
All
gets really interesting when we unpack the
Yeah.
psychology behind it.
Okay.
We've got research articles, even a bit of etymology to
Mhm.
help us understand
Oh, yeah.
why this emotion exists
Oh.
and what it says about us.
You're right. It is a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
And surprisingly common.
Right.
Think about it.
Okay.
Have you ever felt like a secret sense of satisfaction when someone
Yeah.
who, say, bragged nonstop about their success
Yeah.
suddenly faces a setback?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like that gut reaction is
Yes.
wired into us.
It's like almost automatic, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. But our sources actually suggest
Okay.
it's not as simple as just being mean-spirited.
Interesting.
This harm joy can actually tie into our sense of justice
Right.
and how we see the world.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The word itself,
Okay.
Schadenfreude,
Right.
is German
Okay.
and literally translates to harm joy.
Harm joy.
Yeah.
Okay.
But what's interesting is how researchers
Yeah.
are now studying it,
Mhm.
especially with the rise of social media.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Because online, this emotion seems to be
Amplified.
almost encouraged in a way.
Almost like it's
Right.
rewarded online.
It's like social media turns everyday life into a spectator sport.
I like that.
Right.
It really is.
But are likes and shares
Yeah.
actually making us less empathetic?
It's a good question.
The research we have seems to think so.
There's this one study
Okay.
that found that
Yeah.
when loyal customers leave negative comments
Uh-huh.
about other customers online,
Okay.
it can surprisingly damage the brand's image.
You'd think it would be the opposite, right?
You would think.
Yeah.
Yeah, you would think it would almost reinforce the loyalty
Yeah.
to people leaving them.
Right.
But it seems like negativity,
Yeah.
even aimed at someone else,
Yeah.
just creates this overall bad feeling.
Yeah. Like
a
a cloud.
cloud of negativity.
Right.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what that says
Mhm.
about how we react to things online.
Yeah.
Is it easier to be, well, less nice when you're behind a screen?
It definitely seems like online anonymity
Huh.
emboldens people.
Okay.
The research points to this idea
Yeah.
that when you don't see the person's face,
Right.
it's easier to disengage morally.
It becomes less about a real person and more about,
Yeah.
an avatar
And
and a
Bavatar.
target for our frustrations, maybe.
That's a really insightful way to put it.
Yeah.
And when you add in the fact
Okay.
that people with certain personality traits,
Yeah.
what researchers call the dark triad,
Okay.
think narcissism, Machiavellianism,
Right.
are more prone to this type of online Schadenfreude.
Okay.
It starts to paint a pretty complex picture.
Hold on. Break that down for me a bit.
Sure.
Dark triad.
Okay.
I feel like I've heard that term before.
Yeah.
Never fully understood it.
Think of it as a cluster of personality traits
Okay.
that are often associated with,
Yeah.
let's say, a less empathetic
Gotcha.
and more manipulative
Mm.
approach to social interactions.
Okay.
And these traits, when combined with the anonymity of the internet,
Right.
can really fuel those Schadenfreude reactions.
So it's not just about seeing someone fail.
Right.
It's about these underlying personality traits,
Yeah.
finding an outlet.
Finding it out.
And maybe social media provides the perfect platform for that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's not just a harmless venting session.
Right.
There's research showing that constant exposure
Okay.
to this kind of negativity online
Yeah.
can actually damage relationships
Uh-huh.
and erode social cohesion.
Wow.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
at what point does harmless harm joy
Uh-huh.
turn into something more problematic?
That's a great question.
And speaking of questions,
Yeah.
I've got one that's been bugging me
Okay.
as we go through all of this.
Hmm.
We've talked about social media, but
Yeah.
isn't there a type of Schadenfreude
Yeah.
that's actually well justified?
You're talking about justice-based Schadenfreude?
Okay.
And yes, it's a distinct category.
Like when a corrupt politician finally gets caught
Right.
and faces consequences.
Exactly.
It's not that we want to see someone suffer.
Mhm.
It's more that we feel like
Yeah.
the universe is finally righting itself.
Right.
Yeah.
Think of it this way.
Okay.
The research suggests
Mm-hmm.
that this type of Schadenfreude might actually serve a social purpose.
Okay.
It reinforces the idea
Yeah.
that there are consequences for bad behavior
Uh-huh.
and helps to uphold societal norms.
So it's less about personal enjoyment
Right?
and more about reinforcing a sense of fairness.
Exactly.
Almost like a social balancing act.
Precisely.
Okay.
The intensity of this feeling
Yeah.
often depends on how bad the person's actions were
Uh-huh.
and their social status.
So the bigger they are, the harder they fall.
That's right.
It's fascinating to think that something seemingly negative like schadenfreude
Yeah.
could actually have a positive function in society.
It highlights the complex interplay
Yeah.
between individual emotions
Right.
and social dynamics.
Wow.
But it's important to note
Yeah.
that even justice-based schadenfreude
Mm.
can be taken too far.
Okay.
Too much focus on it
Yeah.
can actually make us less empathetic overall.
It's like anything else.
Yeah.
Moderation is key.
Moderation is key. That's right.
Right.
Yeah. It is a delicate balance.
It really is.
Yeah.
You know, digging into this topic has made me think about
Yeah.
how schadenfreude plays out in different cultures.
That's interesting.
Like, is this a universal emotion
Yeah.
or is it more prevalent in certain societies?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the cultural relativity of emotions.
Okay.
While schadenfreude might be a universal human experience,
Yeah.
the way it's expressed
Okay.
and even the degree to which it's considered acceptable
Mm-hmm.
can vary significantly across cultures.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about the history of the word itself.
Okay.
It's not every day
Right.
you hear a German word used so casually in
Right.
English conversation.
It's actually a relatively recent addition
Oh, really?
to the English lexicon.
Okay.
Believe it or not.
Mm-hmm.
Schadenfreude only entered English in the 1920s.
Wow, really?
Yeah.
I would have guessed it had been around much longer.
I know it's surprising than that.
Yeah. And what's even more unusual
Okay.
is that it retained its original German spelling
Okay.
and pronunciation,
Right.
which is quite rare
Yeah.
for borrowed words.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Almost like it needed to hold on to
Yeah.
its original meaning.
Right.
Speaking of meaning,
Yeah.
did other cultures have words for this feeling
Absolutely.
before Schadenfreude became popular?
The ancient Greeks,
Oh, yeah.
for example, had a word for it.
Yeah.
Episharakakia.
Episharakakia.
Yeah. Wow.
It's a mouthful, isn't it?
It's definitely a tongue twister.
Yeah.
It seems like this emotion has been around for centuries,
It has.
even if the way we talk about it has changed.
It speaks to the enduring nature of human emotions.
Yeah.
And our fascination with the complexities of human behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Even something as seemingly dark as Schadenfreude
Right.
can offer valuable insights
Okay.
into how we relate to each other
Mm-hmm.
and navigate the social world.
Before we wrap up this deep dive,
Okay.
there's one more concept I wanted to touch on
Sure.
that's somewhat related to Schadenfreude.
All right.
It's called
Yeah.
tall poppy syndrome.
Yes.
Have you heard of this?
Tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah.
A fascinating phenomenon that's definitely worth exploring.
Okay.
It's this tendency to criticize
Uh-huh.
or undermine those who are perceived as overly successful or outstanding.
It's almost like there's this unspoken rule
Yeah.
that everyone needs to stay at a certain level,
Right.
and those who dare to rise above
Yeah.
are met with negativity.
That's right.
It's a bit disheartening when you think about it.
It is. And it can have a chilling effect on ambition and innovation.
Right.
But we'll save the deep dive into tall poppy syndrome.
Okay. So
Another
it's the
episode.
deep dives.
Consider it a little something
Okay.
to pique your curiosity.
Okay, that's definitely going on my list of
Oh.
future deep dives.
Sounds good.
Now, to bring it all back to our listeners,
Okay.
let's do a quick recap
Okay.
of what we've learned about Schadenfreude today.
We've discovered that it's a much more nuanced emotion
Right.
than we might initially think.
Yeah.
It's not simply about being mean-spirited.
Right.
It can be tied to our sense of fairness,
Uh-huh.
social order,
Okay.
and even our own personal insecurities.
And it's particularly relevant in today's digital age,
Right?
where social media seems to both amplify
Yeah.
and in some ways normalize Schadenfreude.
Yeah. How you
It makes you
Is
wonder,
how you can-
how can we cultivate more empathy online?
That's a really good question.
Even when we see someone getting what they deserve.
That's a crucial question.
Yeah.
Perhaps by acknowledging that there's a real person
Mm-hmm.
with real emotions
Right.
behind every screen name,
Yeah.
we can start to shift the culture
Okay.
from one of judgment and negativity
Right.
to one of understanding and compassion.
It's a challenge.
It is.
But it's something we should all strive for.
I agree.
We encourage you to explore the sources
Yeah.
we've shared today
Mm-hmm.
and delve deeper into this fascinating topic.
It is fascinating.
What are your thoughts on Schadenfreude?
Yeah. What do you think?
Have you ever experienced it yourself?
Huh?
And if so,
Yeah.
how did it make you feel?
It's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, for sure.
And while you're pondering that, we've got one last little nugget of information that
All right.
might surprise you.
Okay.
Remember how we talked about Schadenfreude
Mm-hmm.
only entering the English language
Right?
in the 1920s?
Yes. Yeah.
A surprisingly recent addition.
Well, it turns out we can thank
Okay.
an Irish archbishop
Oh, wow.
named Richard Chenevix Trench for that.
Okay.
He introduced the word to English speakers
Interesting.
in his 1852 book
Okay.
on the study of words.
Now, that is a fascinating bit of trivia.
Right.
It makes you wonder how English speakers
Yeah.
even talked about this emotion before they had a specific word for it.
Maybe they just used a lot of descriptive phrases.
Maybe.
Or maybe they borrowed the ancient Greek word
Right.
episharakakia.
That's right.
Can you imagine trying to slip that in
Yeah.
casual conversation?
It's definitely mouthful.
Right.
Yeah.
But it does highlight
Yeah.
how this emotion
Yeah.
has been recognized
Guys across culture
across cultures. That's right.
and throughout history. It's
Yeah.
almost like it's a part of the human experience.
Part of the human experience. I like that.
So as we wrap up our deep dive into Schadenfreude,
Okay.
what's the one key takeaway
Yeah.
you hope our listeners walk away with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that Schadenfreude is a complex emotion
Hmm.
with deep roots in our psychology
Yeah.
and social interactions.
Okay.
It's not inherently good or bad,
Right.
but rather a reflection of our values,
Mm.
experiences.
And how we navigate the world around us.
I like that.
Yeah.
It's a reminder to be curious about our own emotions
That's right.
and to try to understand the nuances behind them.
Yeah, I think that's key.
And maybe, just maybe, by shedding light on something like Schadenfreude,
Yeah.
we can become a little more aware
We're aware of our own
of our
hearts
own reactions, right?
and cultivate a bit more empathy in the process.
Exactly.
Well said.
Yeah.
And on that note,
Okay.
we'll leave you with a final thought to ponder.
Okay.
If social media seems to amplify Schadenfreude,
Right.
should we be more mindful of our online reactions?
Yeah.
Can we find ways to celebrate
Zelmir.
other successes
Yeah.
without feeling threatened or envious?
That's a good question.
It's a challenge in today's digital world,
It is.
but one worth striving for.
It is.
Until next time, stay curious.
Stay curious.
And remember, there's always more to explore
That's right.
beneath the surface.
Beneath the surface.